HUD's committee will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd. Alderwoman Davis.
Present.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Present.
Alderman Coder.
Here.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Here.
Chairman Roddy.
Present.
7 present, you have quorum.
Great. First order of business, we'll dispense with the excused alderman, or we'll bring that up at the end. Approval of the minutes. The chair will entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by the alderwoman from the 19th, seconded by the alderman from the 22nd. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
When I talk to her.
Alderwoman
Aye.
Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Chairman Roddy.
Aye.
8 aye votes.
By your vote, we've approved the minutes from the October 21st meeting. First board bill we'll take up today is Alderwoman Evans' board bill number 136. Alderwoman? Alderwoman Evans?
Reaching out to her again.
Is there a, have we been in touch with Alderwoman Evans at all yet today? Is she aware of this, or has she asked one of the staff to handle it for her?
Yes, I'm on with her now, so she's aware. I'm speaking with her. I apologize.
Oh, no, that's fine. Thank you. We experience all kinds of technical difficulties during the time of the pandemic, so we're used to this.
Hello, SDL TV here. Do we need any help, assistance getting Alderwoman Evans in?
Okay.
All right. Then.
I have her on the line. She said that the chair called her as well, so she's trying to maneuver between both of us and plans to join. She has the link. Yes.
Yeah, that was me on the phone with her. She's got the link. She's trying to connect in now, she said. Little technical difficulties.
If she joins an attendee, I can promote her if she uses the link on the city website.
Mm-hmm. Well, she was sent a link.
Okay, she's on her way. I apologize.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
Alderman.
morning. Good morning.
Okay.
Don't get confused. She used the link. Miley, so my name is showing as her. So
What? Oh, wait a minute.
I have a twin, but you're not it.
Yes, I am.
So don't get confused.
I'm the sister that you didn't know about.
Oh, okay.
Alderwoman, we're on your board bill number 136. Your first time in front of the committee, don't be intimidated. If you don't know anything, we have staff over at SLDC that can help you. So if you want to kind of give us an overview of what you're doing, and if you need any help, we can call on them.
Okay, well, basically what I'm doing, I have developers that are doing development in the 4th Ward. My lead developer is on the line, and she can give you all the background and insight as to what this particular, what she's doing that's entailed in the bill. And that's Laura Hughes. So and I'm so sorry for being late. Of all days, having internet problems as well as computer. So I just apologize.
Well,
And I understand that you guys have been on here.
Ms. Hughes, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and give us an overview then?
Absolutely. Thank you and good morning. My name is Laura Hughes, and I am the president, founder, and CEO of Fleur-de-Lis Development Corporation. Born and raised in the Ville, I am very excited and honored to have worked with Alderman Sam Moore for several years in planning this development, and also worked with Committee Woman Dwin Evans at the time, who's now my Alderwoman. Part of my goal is to continue with the dream that Alderman Evans set for us, and that includes the developers that are in the region to work on geographically assigned areas. My area that I was assigned is Area C. Area C extends from Lexington to Kennerly, Newstead to the west, and Whittier to the east. I aim to rehab and build new construction on vacant lots. I'm pleased to say that I have a development team that extends to about 20 individuals that include a master planner and now a partner lender and a partner builder. My initial aim will begin at rehabilitation in the 4200 block of Maffitt. At this time, I have about 20 multifamily units that I will perform full gut rehabs. That particular block is in what's called a historic preservation ordinance. I will make sure that any type of rehabilitation that I complete is in line with the existing ordinance. And once I begin the second phase, which includes new construction, that new construction will also be in line with the aesthetic, the beauty, and the value that was initially there as the bill. I'm very honored to be in front of each of you. If you knew that this has been a long haul that started approximately in 2014 with, before beginning to develop, actually learning St. Louis and learning what's required to bring that neighborhood back to life. This isn't me rehabbing individual homes or bringing new construction. My goal is to rehab the community. With that, again, it's been probably 4+ years of studying other markets, including New Orleans, including Detroit, to understand the blight problem, and more so initially address my population problem. Long-term to the region, I hope to continue to partner with other developers and other builders in the area to bring both commercial and pretty much all of the needs of the community in the form of community engagement, whatever presented to me in that fashion. But today I ask that you allow me to proceed with my plan. I'm excited about it, born and raised again here in St. Louis, and committed to making sure that this project is something that both Alderman Sam Moore and the community would be proud of.
Can somebody, I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up the board bill now. Is this is this for a specific geographic, we're blighting a larger area than specific sites then? Is that maybe Dale or somebody from SL? I'm sorry, I certainly don't mean to dismiss. Ms. Hughes, are you familiar? Is this a Chapter 99 development, or is this?
Well, this is Dale, and yes, it is a Chapter 99 redevelopment area, and it includes 163 acres bounded by the streets that Ms. Hughes just outlined: North Newstead, Lexington, Whittier, and Kennerly, all in the 4th Ward. And of course, there are a lot of different parcels within that 163 acres. And as Ms. Hughes indicated, first she's going to work on the properties on Maffitt to rehab, but then obviously there'll be scattered projects throughout this 160 some odd acres.
So Kennerly is which? I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it on the map here. Kennerly is the northern boundary.
The southernmost.
I'm sorry?
The southernmost barrier, if you will. So Lexington to the north,
Okay.
Newstead to the west, Kennerly to the south, and Whittier to the east.
Okay, now I see it. That is a big area. So that's 160 acres, and it's a Chapter 99. And what is the? I presume we're granting a certain amount of tax abatement for that. Then is that correct, Dale?
Yes, the map indicates that we could do up to a 25-year tax abatement. So that's what's in the ordinance. Obviously, it would vary depending on the individual project that we're working on, but that would be the maximum, and that's what the map calls for.
So by doing this, just for clarification, by doing the entire 100 and what did you say it was
163 acres.
163 acres, then going in the future, the developers wouldn't necessarily need individual ordinances passed. They could then come down and visit with SLDC, I presume, and you all would sign off on future projects.
Yes, that's correct.
So it expedites the,
And if there are some sub-developers, we might have partial development agreements with them, depending on, who comes forth and what the project may be. If it's just individual buildings being rehabbed, obviously we don't need that. But if there's an individual project that exceeds $1 million, then we will enter into a specific parcel development agreement.
okay, so projects above $1 million, you would do SLDC would do a parcel development agreement. And then if the folks living in the area currently want to fix up their own home, they would also have access to that.
That's correct. That's correct.
And then in this case, we're not necessarily sponsoring this legislation today specifically for Mrs. Hughes. It would be available for her to take advantage of. Is that correct? But
That is true, although LCRA has designated her as the lead developer.
okay, I'm just trying to make sure that I understand that this is a Chapter 99 and not a 353 where Ms. Hughes is the developer or something.
No, that's absolutely right.
Okay, and then let's see. So her project though is the most imminent project, the first one that would be coming, that would likely use this program. Is that correct?
Correct, right.
Now I think I understand what's going on. Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions?
Sure. Dale, you said Ms. Hughes would be the lead developer, but let's say a couple of years from now, some other developer wanted to come in and redevelop. Would they have to get permission from Ms. Hughes or just work with your office?
No, they could just work with our office, although we certainly would want to bring Ms. Hughes into it to make sure that it's consistent with, the overall image for the area. But no, she is the lead developer, but not the exclusive developer.
Gotcha. Well, just as a comment, I think these are very responsible types of legislation. When we do stuff like this and we cover a greater geography, I think it gives more opportunities for more developers to see the opportunities. And it kind of takes the automatic politics out of it, if you will. Because, redistricting would come up and this area could, will certainly 2 years from now have a different number, could have a different alderperson. And sometimes when elections come about or redistricting come about, that the new alderperson doesn't support what the other alderperson vision was, and then we have chaos. So with these type of legislations, kudos for having the foresight. Thank you, Ms. Hughes, for all the work that you have been doing and you will continue to do over in that community. And I'll definitely be supporting this. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Alderwoman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really have any questions. I'm just going to give another comment on the importance of having an organized process in place for development. So for our new alderperson, Alderwoman Evans, this is a great move for you to have your Chapter 99 in place, and most especially to have someone who has been there and knows how to lead the work and help you with it. So this is exciting. And as you all know, I was in and out with my friend, Alderman Moore, when he was having all those neighborhood planning meetings, and everybody came through to help with it over the years. And so we know community has been involved. So I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I echo some of the same comments as my colleagues have made before. I think it's a blessing to see some stuff getting ready to take place in the Fourth Ward. We all can remember all of the time Sam Moore stood before us and talked about how his ward was being stolen a brick at a time. So I'm excited about it. So I just have a few questions regarding the actual development. How many residential units did you say that there will be?
There are approximately 300 parcels in total. I believe in that area, there may be 90 or so that are existing distressed properties, and the remaining are vacant lots. And so the plan is to strategize and actually rehab several units at one time. I'm calling them quadrants. So at the 4200 block of Maffitt, there will start out with 4 multifamily properties, and I will continue to do sets of 4 or greater, depending on my development crew. After the rehab has been completed, we will continue to assess those distressed properties, those that we can repair. That's our first priority, while we continue to plan smaller. And I chose that particular area because the lot size is smaller, if you will, than the other parcels. There we will build new construction, a variety of types of housing, from ADA compliant to smaller, if you will, shared spaces. I plan on having several builders come in and assist, such that I can offer a variety of types of housings to fit various incomes, etc. At this point, I do have an exclusive builder that I'm working with, and I do have several other builders that have reached out and expressed interest. And so, as Alderman Boyd asked earlier, is there an opportunity for other builders and developers to come in and become part of the plan? Absolutely. That was the whole goal, to do the work and to make sure that the vision was structured such that the template and the model is there. I can't build properties on 1,400 vacant lots, but if I set the tone and set the place for the other developers to come in and assist, I welcome that and hope that the template and the plan is in place for us to continue beyond this particular area.
Thank you for offering that insight. So on any particular project, is the funding in place to go ahead and start, or are we still just in the planning phases of the development?
The funding is in place for the first set of rehabs, and the lender is committed to continue to phase out as I continue to, first of all, grow value and get my comps in the area such that they increase. And from each phase, we will continue to phase out funding based on the direction.
Great, thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Alderman Kotar.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Hughes, for being here today. It looks like this is an incredible project and one that our colleague, Sam Moore, would be very proud of. I did have a couple of questions, maybe just about the scope of it. You mentioned the 350 parcels. Is that the entire number of parcels in that 100 and some odd acres? Or is that just a number of parcels that you're targeting?
Those are the LRA lots that are existing. Well, they're the LRA properties. Some are lots, like I said, approximately 200 or so, and the remaining are the distressed existing buildings.
So how many parcels total are in the redevelopment area?
Let's see, that I'm responsible for? Or
no, I guess it's 134 acres, is that right? Maybe Zach or Miss.
So he described it as 163 acres, but of that, the parcels that I am addressing are those that were available via LRA, and those were a total of approximately 350 or so.
Wow, that is so many LRA properties in one area. I know it's a big, I know that we're looking at 163 acres, but I agree with the alderman from the 22nd ward that, doing these, kind of taking the aldermanic politics out is a good idea. I'm just curious, how many redevelopment areas of this size do we currently have in the city? And maybe this is a question for Dale or Zach, just in a more general sense.
Well, I mean, we have done a number of these, and I go back to the West End urban renewal days in the 1960s, where we did a huge area from Union to the city limits. And Alderman Clark Hubbard recently had legislation that extended the time frame to complete that. So it's been underway for obviously decades, and yet we still see many permits being built, both for new construction and rehab in that huge area, and it's a much larger area than this.
Oh,
So this is not something obviously that Laura Hughes is going to do in the next couple of years, but it provides an opportunity for individuals who own property in the area to upgrade them and rehab and get tax abatement for that, and for individual developers, including Ms. Hughes, to build new houses. And as I said, in the West End area, we still have, for example, Vatterott has just pulled 3 or 4 building permits in that area. And so after all these years, there's still activity, and every year the area gets better. So I would envision something like that happening here as well.
thank you for the context, Dale. That redevelopment area in the Central West End you mentioned, how long is that in effect for?
Well, it was just extended another 10 years. So that was, I guess, in 2019. So right now it's until 2029.
And how long?
The West End's north of Delmar, that area.
Yeah, it's the West End area north of Delmar over to Page and from Union to the city limits.
And then how long was this one in effect for?
Well, this one, I mean, it's anticipated that it would be completed in about 10 years, but we obviously can extend that if activity is going on.
I didn't see that in the board bill. I really appreciate the context. It's helpful to kind of round that out. And Ms. Hughes, thank you for your commitment to the city.
Thank you.
Alderman Oldenburg.
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Boyd.
No questions. I just wanted to congratulate Alderwoman Evans for continuing the work that Alderman Moore fought for so long. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, if there, I too would like to add my congratulations and best wishes to Ms. Hughes, and congratulations, Alderwoman Evans. If there are no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion on Board Bill number 136.
I move we adopt Board Bill number 136 for due pass recommendation.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Coder,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Chairman Roddy,
Aye.
8 aye votes.
By our vote, we've passed out of committee with a due pass recommendation, Board Bill number 136. I believe our colleague from the 28th Ward has joined us. She is a co-sponsor with, is she still here? I'm not sure if I see her on the list here. I receive board bills over from SLDC that are housekeeping bills, and sometimes they impact some specific wards. And I want to apologize to anybody if that's happened and they felt that they should have been the sponsor. I believe Alderwoman Navarro had an interest in a strong interest with good reason in the ordinance regarding the Chase Hotel. Is that what the concern was? I guess that was Board Bill number 165. Dale, do you want to explain what this does? I believe it impacted the Maryland Plaza North redevelopment area. And I thought I saw her on here earlier, and I want to make sure that she received whatever information that that she wanted from this. So, Dale, do you care to step up and?
Well, I'd be happy to step up, but I think Tom Ray actually authored this bill. And from time to time, as it's a tax increment financing related bill, and as TIFs, they have a maximum of 23 years. And as that 23 years ends, or perhaps they've paid off the notes or bonds, we then dissolve the special allocation fund that the comptroller has. And so there are two bills on the agenda. This is one of them, to dissolve that special allocation fund for older TIFs. And I think Tom Ray would be best to talk to that particular bill.
Tom, are you available then to discuss this? Why don't we start off with Board Bill 165, because I believe that was the one that Alderwoman Navarro had an interest in.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking for your approval of Board Bill 165, which is, as Dale said, a termination of special allocation fund for 5 TIF special allocation funds for TIF redevelopment plans. And the reason we're asking for it is because the notes or bonds, or the HUD loan in one of the cases, has been retired. The redevelopment project costs have all been paid. And if we terminate the special allocation funds, the monies that are collected will pass through to the taxing jurisdictions.
So this is, in essence, good news. Can you go through the 5 projects and kind of give us an idea of when or how early they paid off, or if they paid off early at all, or if they just ran out of time?
Well, I can tell you that they have all recently paid off, but when they began, I think I could probably tell you by looking at the Maryland Plaza North was a Series 2009 issue. 1141 to 51 South 7th was a I don't know why I can't find the date, but I don't see it. It's an old one. I think it's before my time, and that's over 15 years ago. MLK Plaza is a 2002 issue. Let's see. 1312 Washington, 2009. And the convention center goes way back. That was a note, a bond, a HUD loan, and a refinance HUD loan. Again, that's when I think I was with the city councilor's office then. So it's, again, beyond 15 years.
Okay. I certainly don't want to hold up the legislation today, but I hope the budget division, it just seems to me that we ought to have people in our budget division that are all over this stuff. I mean, we're doing these things so that we, at some point, the idea is we do these things to grow our tax base and grow the corresponding revenue. And when these things roll off, it's like, this is good news when they're rolling off, and we ought to know how much money they are and, really kind of understand it. I think the next report kind of helps us do that a little bit on an interim basis, but it would be, I just think somebody ought to be watching this from the budget division and be kind of, at some point, these things are significant enough that they're going to start making an impact on the budget. I would expect both for the city and for the school system. Are there any questions, Alderman Boyd?
Sure, Tom. So basically, the ones that you had data on, MLK 2002, Maryland Plaza 2009, 1312 Washington 2009. So they paid off earlier than the traditional 23 years.
Well, 9 and 20, yes, that is correct.
Okay, and you're saying that we have to do this to, we're gonna end the special allocation fund, so no more money will be put into the special allocation fund, but the money will go to the special taxing districts?
To the taxing districts, correct.
For example, Maryland Plaza, what's the taxing district for Maryland Plaza?
Well, they're established by state law, and I believe there's 7 of them. I think that's correct, Dale. And it's like the
Well,
school
I think they're
board.
up to 10, but
Yeah, it's like the school board is the main one, mental health,
Okay.
the library, the city.
The traditional taxing districts that we're obligated to send revenue to, right?
Correct.
yeah, that's correct. And whatever's left in the special allocation fund, because there's always a little bit left, will get distributed to those taxing districts. And then in the future, of course, all the taxes go to the taxing districts as opposed to paying off the TIF note.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, those sound like some pretty good projects if they pay off with, before the 23 years run out. So good job on those.
I think that was my point, Alderman, and to the extent that we're collecting earnings tax or sales tax on these TIFs, they then pass through the general revenue. And of course, we get a bit of general revenue from real estate taxes as well. But that's what I'm saying. These things should start making it, when they pay off early like this is, a reason to celebrate. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no more questions.
Alderwoman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did want to ask a question. I don't know if Tom or Dale remembers, but I know our HUD's committee did have a report done. I want to say it was 3 years ago that gave us a total of these types of projects that had paid off and how much money was going to those districts. And in one instance, I know one of the districts was collecting like an additional $8 million behind the list of those projects that had paid off early. And so I agree with Alderman Roddy. Maybe we can ask for, let's just get a recovery of what has happened in the last 20 years. Because if we look at how long we've been doing these TIF projects, this is a good point to look at those that have paid off early and how much additional funding has gone to our special taxing districts. If that's okay.
Sounds like that'll give us something to do when we have nothing else to do. No, that's an
Absolutely.
important thing. That's an important thing to absolutely know. And, we had an individual we hired about a year ago, Alex, to sort of look at issues such as that. And unfortunately, his family situation wound up, he moved to Chicago recently, but we've just hired a new individual. Yesterday or Monday was his first day, and that's the kind of thing that we want him to do. So we'll put that on his list.
I thank you. And I also wanted to share with, because I know some of the newer colleagues that don't go back in history like you and I, Dale, to look at a Chapter 99 the size of the one in the 4th Ward, it would have been considered a smaller one back in the day.
You're right.
Actually really small. So I'm glad to see that we are looking at these processes again and making them more prevalent, because that's how you get it done. People know that you are looking to get some things done with the Chapter 99, and they know the process that they can get involved in. And I hope we can see more of these, most especially for North St. Louis. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman Hubbard.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment. I too agree with my colleagues from the 19th and the 22nd Ward. I know maybe a year or so ago, I think former Alderman Conway had given us some data to show like properties that had been tax abatement and how much they actually offered to our city's coffers once they came back on the roll. So I think it would be good to look at that information in detail, because a lot of times we have issues with people being anti-incentive down here. But when you make a lot of those decisions, and sometimes there are some hard decisions, and then you can see the actual benefit when you can rebuild the community and make it be more viable. I think that that's something that we need to put out there more so people can fully understand how we move forward as a city by doing those type of things. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I know, Dale, you all have a lot to do already, but I would definitely like to see that here in the near future, all that information and data to show us, you know, what the true benefit has been to those communities we've invested in that way. And so
No, well,
that's
good.
all I
Thank
have.
you. That's a good assignment.
This is Matt from the SLDC. I just want to let you know too, I know part of the issue with the assessor is transitioning their system. So hopefully we'll be able to do those reports quicker, but I have been training emails with the assessor's office to reinstate that report of projects coming off of tax abatement and what the impact is. So we'll continue to work on that.
Thank you, Matt. Alderman Kodar, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Alderwoman Spencer,
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alderman Oldenburg,
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Boyd.
No.
Okay, hearing no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion that we pass out of committee board bill number one. I'm sorry, I shouldn't. If Alderwoman Navarro is present, I saw her on here earlier. If she's present, I don't see her. This is her opportunity.
Well, I've already signed up for it. I had an agent. I talked to the agent last week.
I don't see Alderwoman Navarro, but I don't think there's any concerns at this point. So the chair will entertain a motion on board bill number 165.
I move that we pass Board Bill 165 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Move second, request for previous roll. Hearing no objections, we'll consider board bill number 165 pass out of committee with a due pass recommendation. And why don't we go ahead? Is there another one of those? Then it looks like we're having board bill number
159.
159 is a similar board bill. So why don't you go ahead and address that, Tom, if you don't mind?
Sure. 159 is similar and different. The similarity is that we are asking to terminate the special allocation fund for 4494 Lindell. It's the Optimist Club that Coleman, I believe, was a developer, had a proposed tenant that he was going to do the reconstruction into some commercial units, and the tenant did not pan out. So he never signed the redevelopment agreement. He never asked for an extension beyond the date certain that you can ask for through E&A. So that expired and it's now in a way in default. But so we want to terminate that one. I don't believe it has collected any, there would be no increment, but still you want to terminate the special allocation fund for that also.
Tom, from this is my ward, spirit of full disclosure. So that was a project that we thought we might be able to get a tenant from, I think it was from St. Louis County, to occupy the building over there. It never happened. So, you know, in essence, we never lost any revenue. The building still is terribly underutilized. When we terminate this, will that preclude getting an office tenant later on for some other project?
No, I suspect, Alderman, that a new developer would come back and ask for some new public benefit, one of which could be a TIF. And if he did, we would start the process over again.
Okay.
I don't know that you want to pick up this older one. It's been around for a while, 2015. So you've had 5 years already of your 20 years burned off.
Okay.
23 years, I'm sorry.
Well, the idea would be is in time that, you know, as the area gets stronger, we wouldn't need, you know, as much, but obviously the office market isn't as strong as the residential market, at least not in West End or anywhere in the city.
Well, a comparison might be if you think of like Grand Center, where they broke out 634 and started a new TIF redevelopment plan for that particular project, as opposed to the entire Grand Center one. I mean, he might ask for some other, he or she may ask for some other public benefit, like an abatement. It depends upon the project.
Okay.
You know what
But
Dale was
the
willing
bottom
to.
line is this is one that never took off, never collected money, never diverted money from any of the underlying taxing districts. So it's just more a housekeeping thing.
Right.
This
Okay.
is Matt from SLD. This is Matt from SLDC. I did want to point out that as you'll see in the next board bill, where we do the report on the 5-year anniversary TIF, this did collect a nominal amount based on what the comptroller is reporting of about $7,500. So I'm
Okay.
not sure what happens with that money, but you will see in the next board bill the report that project is listed in there is a nominal amount of collections that occurred.
But no private entity received any of that money.
No, correct.
So that should pass through to the
Yeah.
tax extra that we presume.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If there's any questions on this board bill, Alderman Boyd,
No questions.
Alderwoman Davis,
No questions.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
No questions.
Alderman Kotar,
No questions.
Alderwoman Spencer,
No questions.
Alderman Oldenburg,
No.
Alderwoman Boyd.
No questions.
Hearing no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion to pass out of committee board bill number 159.
Move to pass 159 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second, request previous roll.
It was moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 7th. There was a request for previous roll. Hearing no objections, we'll consider board bill number
My plate broke.
We'll consider
And I had
board
it
bill number
repaired.
159 is passed out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Okay, our last board bill is, again, a housekeeping bill. This is the annual bill that we're supposed to pass, ordinance that we pass each year to, it's a matter of state statute. It gives us an update on the progress the TIFs are making. Last year, I think we had a rather heated discussion about this. We eventually passed it. The mayor vetoed it because of, but I don't think we even ended up doing anything with it. In any event, we should be doing this every year. And Dale or Matt, I don't know who wants to walk us through this, but this is, we asked them to revise this report and start providing a little bit more detail on the progress these TIFs are making on as they begin paying off. So this is probably, at least in mine, this exhibit was attached to the email that. So if anybody wants to follow along, or what would be better, can we give this to somebody and they can run it? Is somebody there from SLDC wants to walk us through this report, Dale?
Sure, I'll start it. This is Dale. As Alderman Roddy indicated, this
Dale,
is.
did you want to do screen share with your report, or is everybody comfortable following along on their own?
We have a PowerPoint that we can put up that we sent over to the Board of Aldermen a day or so ago, if we want to go through it.
Why don't, if that's available, why don't we do that in case we have people who do not have access to that, so they can at least follow along there.
Thank you.
Okay, good. We can start there. Well, state statute 99.865 requires that each year we report out the projects, the TIF projects in the city that have had, are celebrating a 5-year anniversary. So that's the purpose of Board Bill 164. In addition to that, well, and what is required is that we place notice in the daily record that we're going to have this meeting. And the state statute requires we do that on 4 consecutive weeks. So that was done beginning October 24th, ending last Saturday, that we placed notice that this was going to happen. Also, there's an annual statement that needs to get published, and that's what's on the screen now, which is a summary of all the TIFs that the city has approved. And our office, St. Louis Development Corporation, fills out 1 through 6, I guess 1 through 7. And then the comptroller's office fills in the numbers on the ones, items 8 through 13. So you can see, so far we've approved 145 TIFs. And before today, we've terminated 30 of those, and we've got another 5 or 6 now we'll be terminating over the next month or so. So that number will go up after the 2 board bills that we just talked about, 136 and 159 are I'm sorry, 165 and 159 are approved. So we've published this notice as well in the daily record. And then further, every year, the state sends out a form for each of the active TIFs that we need to fill out and send back to the state. And the deadline for that is November 15th. So that was just a few days ago. So we sent 121 reports back to the state, which we do each year, and that has been accomplished too. But the projects that we're now talking about today are the ones celebrating a 5-year anniversary. And I'll be happy to go through all of those. I mean, stop me if you don't want as much information as I have ready, but there were no projects.
Dale,
Yeah, go ahead.
Could you hold first? Can you go back? Is this slide available for us to ask some questions on later, or should we stop now because this has got some pretty good information on it? And,
well, this whole PowerPoint would be available to you if you want it.
Well, I just said no. I have a couple questions about this slide, and I didn't know if the rest of the committee. I guess we can ask you to come back to this. Why don't we do that? We'll go through your presentation and we'll let people ask questions.
Okay, fine. So we can go to the next slide. As I said, we didn't have any project celebrating a 25-year anniversary. We have one project celebrating a 20-year anniversary, and that's the Miro Digital Publishing building. And this was Jim McKelvey, who started Square. This was sort of our first introduction to him when he bought this building and opened his publishing company here. And so he's the only individual I know of that ever submitted a TIF application without having an attorney involved. He put it all together himself. It was a project of $1.3 million. And we approved the smallest TIF I think we've ever approved, $390,000 to allow this to occur. The property now is used by SSM as their Cardinal Glennon Children's Foundation, but it is still paying real estate taxes. And the TIF will mature in 2024 if Matt will go over the attachment, which talks about all the various projects. But it is not paid off, may well not pay off by 2024, but the TIF will end in 2024. Okay, and the next group of slides, and there are 10 of them that deal with projects that are celebrating their 15-year anniversary. And I mean, we could talk a lot about each one of these projects, but I'll just touch on them. And if you want more information, we can talk about it. The first is Grand Center. And of course, that one is a huge project. The TIF notes there mature in 2025. There are 500 parcels of land involved in the overall project. You can see the map that outlines the area. The largest project within that was the Shavitz Arena, which at St. Louis University. But there are another 9 projects that were assisted through the TIF. And there were a lot of infrastructure improvements as well throughout the area. So that's probably one of the larger TIF areas that we've done outside of Northside. That is really coming to an end in a couple of years. Next slide is the Abbey on the Park. This was a church in the Lafayette Square area that Chris Goodson acquired and created 8 residential condominiums in it at the cost of $2.2 million. And there was a $600,000 TIF involved. And the project was completed in 2005. And the TIF, as I said, will mature in about 5 years on that one. The next one is the Ludwig Lofts. Which
Hello, I'm just listening. Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. The Ludwig Lofts, which actually consists of the building marked Ludwig plus the building next to it, right?
I just see Alderwoman Green. I don't see anybody else.
I think someone maybe who needs to somebody mute. Somebody mute their,
Evans here. She doesn't have
Somebody needs to mute.
that
one of the-
Alderman Boyd, perhaps. Okay.
It sounds like an
So
assistant.
it involved these 2 buildings. The Ludwig Loft project at 1006 and 1004 Olive Street. Total of 40,000 square feet of commercial space and 17 residential units. It was completed at the cost of a little more than $7 million. There was an $850,000 TIF involved. It was completed in 2007, and that TIF won't mature until 2029, 9 years from now. In fact, that's generally when all of these TIFs will mature in the 15-year area. Another downtown project, the Syndicate Trust. That was a huge project, 450,000 square feet that resulted in 81 apartments and 91 condominiums, plus 21,000 square feet of commercial space. And there was internally 125 parking spaces. It was a $69 million project. And there was an $8.2 million TIF involved in that project. The next one is the Loop Hotel, which is the Moonrise Hotel. We can go to the next slide. There you go. And this was completed in 2010. The Moonrise Hotel includes 120 guest rooms, plus a couple of restaurants and a lounge on the rooftop. This was almost a $20 million project, and a $2 million TIF was involved in that one. Next slide is the Del Mar East public improvements. And that was throughout the Del Mar area, all along Del Mar, from De Bolivar west to the city limits, and along Skinker in that whole triangular area, which then wound up being acquired by Washington University. Most of that was all part of the Del Mar East public improvement area. And it allowed for all the streetscapes and et cetera that went into that area. It was a total of a $16 million project supported by a $6 million TIF. The next is a Union Club building. We're back in Lafayette Square. It was a new construction project right at the corner of Jefferson and Interstate 44. It included 6,000 square feet of commercial space, which unfortunately never really got rented, and 39 residential units. Originally, it was going to be a condominium project, But as you recall, the condominium market, the financing of them went south in the late 2000s. And so those units wound up being rental units, and they continue to be rental units today. The project was completed in 2009. It had an overall budget of a little over $11 million, and it had about almost a $2 million TIF involved. Next one is back downtown. It involved 3 couple station historic buildings. Buildings at 900, at 1000, and at 1014 Spruce Street. Each of those buildings were to be rehabbed, and the 9000 Spruce one was completed in 2013 at the cost of $35 million. It's 147,000 square feet of commercial space. 1000 Spruce Street, which is just to the west, was completed in 2009, and it was completed at $25 million. And it has a first floor restaurant, a bar, et cetera, in it. But the rest of the building has 68 residential units. The third building, which was wound up being at 1014 Spruce Street, was never developed. The building proved to be structurally unsound. In 2012, it was demolished. The site is currently owned by the treasurer, and the treasurer is currently working with a potential developer. And in fact, there was on the LCRA agenda yesterday, it got tabled, but was moving ahead with that project. And though it got tabled because certain information was not yet totally cooked, but hopefully it'll be on the LCRA agenda next month. And it won't be a TIF project, but rather a tax abatement project for new construction on that vacant site that the treasurer owns. Project number 8 in the 15-year project list is 2200 Gravois. We can go to the next slide. There we go. This was a very interesting project. It was a historic building, the Polar Wave Ice and Fuel Company. Lippick Penn was in it more recently. And it resulted in 19,000 square feet of commercial, which includes a whole range of uses, including a sound studio, a restaurant, et cetera. But then the old historic part of the ice house, which had no windows in it, was converted to 16 very unique residential units, rental units. The overall cost was $8 million. It had a $1 million TIF associated with it. Project number 9 is 4100 Forest Park. And this is before we had a Cortex. This building, which was the old Ford Motor Company assembly plant, was converted to condominiums, and 42,000 square feet at the cost of $39 million. And there was a $6.5 million TIF approved. And it remains condominiums today. The first floor has commercial uses in it, but the upper floors, golly, if you bought one of those back when it was completed in 2009, before you knew TIF was going to surround you, I mean, it wound up being, I'm sure, a great place to be. Item number 10 in the 15-year project is St. Louis Center. And you might recall when it first was approved as a TIF, it was going to be primarily the low part, the old shopping mall was going to be primarily residential. And then the rehab of the office tower, which is the building to the left. The building to the left did get rehabbed, and it is rehabbed today and beautifully done, repositioned as 600 Washington Avenue. But the mall part, as you well know, did not pan out as a residential project. Again, this was in the 2008-2009 era where a lot of residential projects went belly up. And so that part became, as you know, a 750 car parking garage primarily, but it includes the MX Theater and a lot of retail uses on the first floor. So it's a great project, but it didn't wind up panning out as it had happened. And this was all RPA 1. RPA 2 was going to be the renovation of the 6 Baron Fuller, the Dillard's building across the street, but that wound up being eliminated and wound up being its own project at a somewhat future time. So I think those are the projects that have celebrated their 15 years anniversary. Now we'll go to the 10-year anniversary. They're just one of those. And it's an industrial project up in the North Riverfront, the North Broadway Cary area. And it wound up being Love's Travel Center. And you might recall that Love's wound up buying 12 acres of land that LCRA had accumulated over the years while buying little individual parcels in this area. And the travel center was completed in 2014. It was a $3.5 million TIF, and the travel center was a $13.2 million project. So that's quite different than other TIF projects we've done, but was very unique in that area and supports all the truck traffic in that area, the truck uses in that area, the companies that relate to TIF and logistics really appreciated this project getting done. This TIF matures in 2034. Then there are 3 projects that are celebrating their 5-year anniversary. They include 634 North Euclid. There we go, which is the On God Hotel. And it has 140 rooms in it, plus 21,000 square feet of office space on the second and third floor. And then the restaurant and other commercial space on the first floor. And before the COVID, I mean, it was really doing very well. It's a very unique hotel. It caters to the arts, and we're really pleased to have it. It's the first phase of the TIF. The second phase has not yet happened. It would be a mixed-use building to the east and southeast of the hotel on what is now a parking lot. And hopefully that project, which was figured at a $53 million project, will move ahead in the short term. The next 5-year project is the one we just discussed, 4494 Lindell. And this is the Oddfellow building. And as we just discussed, it did not happen. So you are now in the process of terminating that TIF. So that will not move ahead. The third project celebrating its 5-year anniversary is 32 North Euclid. And this, as you recall, was a little 1-story commercial strip along Euclid, very underutilized, which was demolished. And this, on less than a half acre, this 6-story building was built. It included 80 underground parking spaces, 11,000 square feet of retail, 10,000 square feet of office space. And by the way, that is being converted to residential now because the residential was so successful that it made sense to add more units to the project. And 71 apartments above in the upper 4 floors, or 5 floors. So that was a $31 million project supported by a $4.5 million TIF, and it was completed in 2018. So in addition to that, those 5-year anniversaries, there were 5 projects that were terminated that would have celebrated their 5-year anniversary had they not been terminated. They include a Lindell condominium, which would have been at the corner of Euclid and Lindell. Another project wound up getting built there using tax abatement. A Loop Center North project, which was a two-story commercial project. It would have been a TIF, but instead the Everly Apartments, which was a much, much better project, wound up getting developed there using tax abatement. A small residential project at 5918 Delmar was terminated. And that project I don't think has ever been reutilized, but hopefully it will. The Jefferson Arms, and this is a 2006 TIF project, which never happened. It was terminated. And as you know, subsequently, another TIF has been approved for the Jefferson Arms. It has not been initiated yet, but the developer is still very active, and I think there'll be legislation before the Board of Aldermen soon to extend the development of this project and allow it to move ahead. But the old one back in 2006 was terminated. And then there was an apartment building, a senior building down at 4249 Michigan, which never got never came to pass. And so that one was terminated a number of years ago as well. So that's sort of the summary of the various projects celebrating their 5-year anniversary. Attached to Board Bill 168 is a chart which gives the numbers for these various projects. And it includes the basic numbers plus some projections. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt Bauer, who can go through that part of it with you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I hope I am sharing the screen with the spreadsheet. If you can see that. Obviously, there's a lot of numbers to go through here, so I'm just going to go through it in a general sense as opposed to going through everything, and hit some highlights and some unfortunate lowlights. So, you know, if we go across the top, just gives the basic information about the project, the amount, the TIF approved, the TIF percentage, the type of project, the initiating ordinance adopting the TIF redevelopment plan, when that was approved, the construction status. Grant Center is listed as partially complete because there's other projects that could potentially start there. Broadway Cary was listed as partially complete, but Dale informed me today that there are no additional plans to build additional things on that site. So that is, I guess, at this point considered completed. The developer entities, let's see. And then I guess the next ones are impact. So these projects total 856 dwelling units combined between apartments and condos, although most of them are apartments at this point. Almost 300 apartment units, 1.26 million square feet of commercial space between retail and office. The projected jobs the projected and retained jobs from the application, and then the current estimated and retained jobs. Some have overperformed, some have underperformed. The current estimated retained jobs is actually an estimate calculated by the comptroller's reporting of earnings taxes collected, and then dividing that number by the average annual wage in the region. So it's reflective of both kind of wages and employees. It's not a actual head count. It's based on earnings taxes, an estimate based on earnings taxes. And then we go into the more financial portion of the TIFs. So as I scroll across, let's see here. The unpaid principal amount remaining on the TIF notes. The rest of this comes from the comptroller, except for the last three columns, with which I'll describe what we did there. The maturity date of the TIF note, I believe it's actually of the TIF, and then the amount of pilots collected since inception. So that's the property tax increment. The EATs collected since inception, and that's informative in that we only collect half of the EATs go to the Special Allocation Fund. So that $26 million has gone to the Special Allocation Fund, but the bottom half of that, so another $26 million has been distributed to the taxing districts in the city, and in just the typical traditional taxing district that would receive the sales taxes and earnings taxes funds. And then the next column is just a combination of those two. So the total amount collected for the Special Allocation Fund since the inception of these projects. Then the next column is the total of payments on principal and interest to date on each of these, which I'll describe a little bit further. I think it's more illustrated in the next few columns. So the next three columns are estimates of TIF performance against paying down the TIF note or any obligations they have. The comptroller accounts for things that have happened. They will not. They don't do projections going forward. So what we did, our team at SLDC put together a model to try to estimate how the TIFs are performing. And what that's based on is we make an assumption that it's a 23-year loan, which isn't exactly the case, but we just make this assumption that there's a 23-year TIF loan to be paid off, and do a straight amortization schedule for that 23-year TIF loan. Then we take the numbers that the comptroller has provided us kind of as a point in time. And so the kind of the baseline is that 23-year TIF amortization, and then we take another kind of amortization schedule using the point in time information we have from the comptroller, and kind of compare the two against each other to see how far ahead or behind the projects are from what we would anticipate them being able to fully pay off their loan. And so as you'll see here in these last three columns, there's a lot of red, which is not good news. But so most of these projects are behind what we would where we would anticipate they should they be paying off their TIF in the full 23-year period. There are a couple that have paid ahead of time, and as you'll note from Tom Ray's earlier presentation, there are TIFs out there that do pay off early, but we're not seeing a lot of them here. I think what we can say about these TIFs is we have like 10 TIFs that are passed and active in 2006, which, as we all know, the bust occurred just after that. So I think a lot of these projects are impacted by an immediate downturn in pilots or anticipated pilots compared to what the kind of cost benefit analysis was at the time. And then because there's interest rates being paid on these TIFs, once they get behind, the interest accumulates and it just can't get back to paying the principal. So therefore, the pay down of the principal is behind what we would anticipate it should be. Also, many of these projects were heavily residential. That's not something we do a lot anymore. We don't do a lot of TIF anymore as compared to what was done in the past, but also we specifically shy away from all residential TIFs, which was not the case back then. Usually projects that have a significant commercial or aspect can perform better over time because it's generating actual economic activity from sales and earnings taxes. Trying to think, I think that kind of goes through it. I can answer, Dale and I can try to answer specific questions, but the general flavor is obviously, a bunch of TIFs that were passed during this era are not performing to expectations. There is one more important point in that even though these are not paying off, it's very important to note that this is not an obligation of the city to make these whole. These are, that's between the developer and their financiers to work out whatever needs to be worked out. From the city's point of view, we are not losing the amount of money that is short of paying the notes. I guess what the impact is that, that instead of paying off a project that might pay off in 18 years and start paying back to the taxing districts won't start paying back to the taxing districts until the TIF matures at year 23. So I think that's an important point to make too. So again, I'll go back. If you have questions, Dale or I can try to answer them as best as possible.
Matt, before we open it up to committee, just real quickly, I'd like to make sure I understand a couple things here. You have the unpaid principal TIF amount, so we know what for these 15, the amount that's unpaid, it's 52 million. What was the initial face amount? I don't.
The initial what amount?
Yeah, well, the initial. So how much has been paid? In other words, what were the original face amount of the notes?
Let's see. I mean, the TIF, we've got the TIF amount over here.
Yeah.
In most cases, it lines up pretty well.
Yeah.
I think the comptroller.
Matt, because I think that $80 million in Grand Center, for example, doesn't look like that's. Did they issue the full?
Oh, correct. You're right. And that's why Grand Center is not fully on there because there's discrepancies between the two, and I haven't been able to get back with the comptroller to answer some of those questions since their point person is out right now. But there is that is something I can add to the table and send back because it is on the comptroller. It is on the comptroller's report, so I can add that if it's helpful. So, for example, let me look at. I've got that paper in front of me. Grand Center is divided over three separate notes, and I can't add it up in my head right away, but it looks like it totals about $20 million.
Okay, and you have about almost $10 million in unpaid principal. So.
Yeah, and this one's weird. Grand Center's weird too because they also show 30 million, and this is the question I had for the comptroller. It's showing 30 million in pilots and each collected, but they also show $45 million in payments of principal and interest. So that's an outstanding question I have with the comptroller right now.
Yeah, there must be some accounting mistake there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess Dale, gosh, I hate is all these on the same slide deck, or I hate to keep bouncing back and forth between the two slide decks or the two presentations. Why don't we let everybody ask a question about this, and then I have a question for Dale on his first slides. Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions about this or from Dale, but doesn't need his slides?
Yeah, I just have a question for Matt. Matt, I'm looking at the current years ahead column or behind, and I'm just kind of confused. So if we just start with the first one, Miro Digital Publishing is 18 years behind on paying off the TIF. Is that the way I'm supposed to read that?
Yes. Yeah. And to be clear, this is just an estimate on projection. So there might be, it's not being, this isn't a pure accounting of the project. We're just taking a point in time from what the comptroller's numbers have and putting that against what an ideal payoff schedule would be. So, but yes, it just, generally it shows it's way behind, this shows us that it's way behind.
Okay, so the Grand Center and the St. Louis Center, there are some discrepancies and that's why they're blank?
Yeah.
Okay, and basically it looks like there's only 3 really successful projects, which is
Correct.
the Loop Hotel, Delmar East Public Improvements, and 634 North of Grand.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't characterize those as the only successful projects because a lot was accomplished by all the projects. But they're the only 3 that probably are going to pay off before the 23 years expires.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a good, I mean, there's financial performance against the TIF note, and then there's, we have, as the slideshow presented, we've got developments that, but for the TIF, would not have happened.
Yeah, so listening to Dale's presentation, that sounded really encouraging and exciting, and then coming behind looking at your numbers, it's kind of like things went this way in my head.
Well, it's because I'm a very positive individual.
Yeah.
You fluffed it up. Is that what you're saying, Dale? You fluffed it up?
No, I wouldn't say that.
I think
Okay.
I was going to say another important thing to note is they're falling behind on their TIF notes. But I was trying to think of an analogy to describe this. So let's say you were building a new house, but you didn't have a down payment, so you took out a loan. You've got your mortgage, but you also have a loan for the down payment, which is a small percentage of the total project. You might be paying your mortgage off fine, but you're not. But you're behind on the down payment loan that you've taken out, and that needs to be worked out in some way. But if there was a very serious problem with these, and there might have been in the past, but you would hear banks foreclosing on projects, et cetera, if there was indeed a very severe problem with a project. But like Dale noted, these projects are built. They're providing commercial space and residential units, and after the 23 years, we'll be paying taxes into the taxing districts. And in some cases, with the EATs, they're already paying a significant amount into the taxing districts. Between the developer and their lenders, obviously they're not paying off the TIF portion, or they're not paying it off as quickly as they anticipated, the TIF portion of their financing. But again, that does not impact the coffers of the city of St. Louis.
So can we say, but for the TIF, we're still collecting at least $26 million in each?
Absolutely, right.
Okay, so there's still a bright side, although it looks like a lot of red out there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thanks, Matt and Dale.
Alderwoman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to get clarity on my understanding, Matt or Dale, either one. And I'm going to use MLK Plaza as an example. For those people who look at those red numbers and we automatically assume something is wrong, what most people don't understand is that the city of St. Louis, when it comes to the actual financing structure, we sit in a certain place there, and we are well protected in how we structure the TIF for the long run. And the financier of the projects is the one who takes the brunt if for some reason the project is not successful and or the developer is not paying their bills, in a way of speaking. And I do know that MLK Plaza had trouble in the first, I want to say 5 to 7 years of that development. But once it was turned around and it had new ownership and everything else, it became successful. And so, and then it's on the list that it's paid off. So we have 23 years of a note that can go up and down. Is that correct?
That's correct. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, whoever the bank or whatever who carries these notes, I mean, the interest is being paid, and so they're still, you know, it's not like they're not getting money out of each of these projects. It's just that when the final bell tolls, they may not get all their principal back.
Okay. And then when we talk about Grand Center, when you go back and look at those numbers, make sure you keep in the back of your mind, and or we want to make sure that documentation is right, because I know that I pulled Sweetie Pies out of there and that became its own TIF, and it's not a part of Grand Center anymore. And so we want to just make sure all that it has all the clarity there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm trying to get back with the point person at the comptroller's office about Grand Center and St. Louis Center, because there are a few questions.
Okay.
About the numbers.
Thank you.
Okay, Alderwoman Hubbard.
No questions.
Alderman Kodar.
Thank you, Chairman. And guys, apologies if you already covered this, but looking at, I guess, the second page of Exhibit A, where we've got the principal pay down to date compared to amortization schedule. I mean, just generally for most of these projects, you know, these TIF notes, are they backed by the city, or are they backed by private individuals and developers?
No, they're backed by private individuals. The city does not.
I just wanted to clear that up. So where they're behind payments, I mean, if these were to default or someone were to foreclose, you know, the city's not on the hook for these.
Not at all, no.
Okay. And a lot of these downtown ones, well, really all of them, I guess, predate me. So are these isn't there a TIF at the Embassy Suites? Downtown? Does that have a TIF?
That was when Dale was describing the project. That was originally part of the St. Louis Center TIF, but it was carved out, and it's its own separate TIF at this point, which is just not in its 5-year anniversary. Thus, it's not on this report.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so it hasn't reached 5 years on its own. All right.
I mean, it might have reached 5 years, but it's not in its 5, 10, 15, 20-year anniversary, which is the reporting required here, the scope of the reporting required here.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Nothing further.
All right. Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, you know, just for some additional clarity there, you know, we have so much red going on here. Can you explain what the impact to the city when we have these TIFs not performing up to, you know, what was the scheduled performance? I realize that they're backed by private individuals. The city's not going to have a big bill at the end of it, but what is the impact on the city when they're late?
Well, I would think that if they were paying off in accordance with what was hoped in the beginning, that both the pilots and the eats would be greater. So right now you add all these up to $41 million worth of pilots. Mm-hmm. And if they were performing well, maybe it would have been $50 million worth of pilots, and the same with the eats.
Sure.
But you know, what was projected. And in a lot of these, so many of these are 15 years old. And that was when the residential bubble broke, you know, in 2008, 2009. So a lot of the projections in that whole period were destroyed by that whole bubble that broke in 2008, 2009. So to the extent I think Matt indicated, to the extent that these were residential projects, and they're not all that, but a number of them were, they just haven't performed. I think what happened to a great extent on the residential projects is that the rent per square foot was projected to go up X amount each year. And for a period of years, that hasn't happened. Now rental rates are increasing significantly. And maybe some of these numbers, these red numbers, will go down over the next 4 or 5 years if indeed rental rates continue to escalate as they have been. But for a long period of time, for at least a 10-year period, they did not escalate at the rate that had been projected because of that downturn in 2008, 2009.
Yeah, Dale, I think it would be helpful if we had some side-by-side understanding of what the anticipated eats and pilots were, so we could understand what the impact of the performance really is on the bottom line for the city. Just to put it in some context. I realize these are just the ones on the 5 and 10 year anniversary, but it would also be helpful to kind of look at this in a broader context of all the TIFs outstanding, especially hoping that some of the other ones that aren't on these anniversaries would be performing better. Do we have that collective view of the TIFs throughout the city of St. Louis?
Matt, I don't know if you can answer that. I mean, one answer would be over a 5-year period, we're going to cover them all because each year it's the 5-year anniversaries. But we haven't done this analysis. Last year was the first year we did this kind of analysis, so we only have that over a 2-year period.
Yep, and I would say the intent is to do this because we get the reporting from the comptroller every year, is to have this for every active TIF on an ongoing basis. But as we said, we were down a person. We now have that person that has can dedicate to some of this kind of post project approval analysis. So we're gonna dig in deeper on that as well, and we're also gonna pick out a couple projects and go back into the file and look at kind of drill down into the annual year-to-year projections that were provided at application and kind of see where exactly things went wrong. Just like I said, there isn't really an impact to the city's bottom line, but especially as we look forward, we just kind of want to figure out where things went wrong and what we can do better in the future. I will say, thinking back on this too, is, there was 10 TIF projects plus other 3 or 4 that were approved in 2006, and I've been at SLDC for 3 years, and in that time we've only approved 3. So obviously the use of TIF has been significantly more judicious in the past several years, and also, projects on this list that were getting 23-year TIFs are now getting 10-year tax abatements at less than 100%. So I think it does show that in the last decade or so, we've been moving in a positive direction in one, the overall use of TIF, and 2, the amount of incentive used overall to get these types of projects done.
That's helpful.
This
So,
is,
sorry, Jonathan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just wanted to try and help answer your question a little bit too. As far as the impact to the city financially on a TIF being behind, the TIF is going to capture on a given year, it's going to capture 100% of the pilots, and it's going to capture 50% of the EATs, no matter if it's performing on schedule, ahead of schedule, or behind schedule. So the only time and place where it's going to impact the city on an annual basis is going to be whenever we're looking at a TIF that is past the point where it should have paid off. So generally that's going to be the 17 to 18 year mark is when they should have paid off, based on how they're usually, structured with the debt coverage ratios and the discount rates that are provided. So on an annual basis, unless they're past sort of like the 17, 18 year mark, they're not necessarily impacting the city on from a financial perspective on year to year. But like I said, the ones that are beyond that point, they should have paid off. And so they're now not, they're still basically diverting revenue away from the city that they, shouldn't have. And, I think one thing that we've been talking about internally to perhaps try and prevent this issue in the future is to try and figure out a way to address the issue of compound interest and what happens when interest accumulates far beyond, what was originally projected. We don't have a solution for that yet, but we are thinking about it internally.
Thanks, Jonathan. As far as that cost goes, are there indirect costs to the city? For example, does the poor performance of these TIFs impact our ability to borrow or credit rating or anything of that nature?
When I talked with our attorney, Mark Spiderman, yesterday, and there's still some debate about it, but I think the general consensus is, too, that it's really indirect in that just the poor performance of the TIFs against initial expectations just shows an overall stagnation in the city. So it more is illustrative of the local economy and the local development environment, and in that way it can put a negative, not a direct negative impact on financing and bond ratings, et cetera, but it just is another kind of illustrative example of the stagnant nature of the local economy. Is my understanding.
Yeah, I would add to that just to say that the credit rating agencies are probably looking at the perspective that the TIFs are going to take longer to pay off, which means it's going to be longer before the city starts generating the revenue that maybe was originally anticipated. Mm-hmm. So, that would be sort of a long-term negative. That would, to what degree that would weigh on their, how they rate the city, I don't know. Because I don't know their calculus and their formulas, but obviously that would be something that they would be thinking about.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to drill down into the underlying reasons we have so many that are poorly performing, whether it's the underlying city regional economy, the stagnation of our entire economic activity in a general sense, or if there are projects in particular that we could have anticipated a little bit better. Are we, the last year's review, are we updating that yearly or keeping that current, or is that something that we're going to kind of be able to come back and look at all the TIFs in a collective sense soon?
The intent is basically to have this for every TIF ongoing, so every year when we get the analysis from the comptroller to plug those numbers in and have this spreadsheet, but for every TIF. I think the complication for this time of year is we get just so you kind of understand the timeline. Like 3 weeks ago, we got all the numbers from the comptroller, and then on November 15th, as Dale mentioned earlier, we've got reports due to the state Department of Revenue. So compiling those reports we take the numbers from the comptroller and have a 2-week rush really to get all those reports in, and then immediately after that we've got this report due. So what we plan to do is, now that we've got some breathing space, is to expand this across the whole TIF portfolio and do that on an ongoing basis every year. So we have so instead of just having the 5 years, we'd have everything available. Yeah. The 5-year anniversary is dictated by the state. That's why these projects have been selected.
Yeah, once we do that, it would be interesting to see if these red numbers are going up or going down. In other words, maybe a lot of the red numbers are there because of performance 5, 6, 7 years ago, and now things are doing better and those red numbers would go down, but we don't have the information.
Yeah. Well, and also what types of projects are doing well versus the types of projects that aren't doing well.
Right.
Well, I think there's something to add to it too. So there's a number of reasons why a project is underperforming and why so many different projects can be underperforming. It could be the possibility, like has been mentioned, that there was the economic recession of 2008 and 9, and that could have caused TIFs to underperform. Certainly, there's also the possibility of just something with a project. So, like for example, the ones on here that I actually was involved in doing analysis on would be 634 North Grand, which is behind. And I think the bottom two were actually done before I started doing analysis, the Lindell and the Euclid one. But my understanding of the reason why 634 North Grand is behind is because that project was originally including quite a bit of earnings and payroll tax projected from the Bull Moose headquarters relocation. And to my knowledge, that never happened. And I don't think I'm not sure, but I don't think they put in an office user that was going to generate the kind of earnings tax that project was supposed to generate. So that's an example of why that one is behind. But then the other thing to think about, or some reason why these are behind, is because, especially the older TIFs, there wasn't necessarily any. In fact, you could even say that there was an incentive for developers to have the most optimistic, rosiest projections possible whenever they were trying to size up their TIF note, because the rosier their projections, the larger the TIF note that could be supported. And so therefore they would be, the downside to them, really there wasn't any, because if they didn't meet the projections, that just meant that they were getting the full TIF revenues for 23 years. And so, the banks probably were not financing this based on the full TIF note amount. They were probably financing it on more, realistic, numbers or whatever, but we don't know what those numbers were at this point. And this was all stuff that was mentioned in the audit report that the state did recently. But that's stuff we're trying to remedy going forward by being much more stringent on the assumptions that we use in these things.
Thanks, Jonathan. My last question is really simple. How many TIFs do we have currently? I'm guessing by projecting, we've got, 17 here, probably, multiply by 5.
Dale might mention that because that was on that first slide in his presentation. Was it like 120 active TIFs? Is that correct, Dale?
121.
121. Okay, I'm sorry I missed that earlier, and I appreciate the clarification there. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just a couple quick comments regarding all the red on here. One is this report should have more red because the ones that are paying off aren't going to be showing up on this. So we dissolved a couple today, which are success stories. As time goes along, the ones that are on here are the ones that aren't being paid off. So, we'd like to, kind of acknowledge, that's almost like an exception report. Right now we have more exceptions than we would like. But I think the whole idea of this exercise, and I think we've made, and I want to compliment, the folks over at SLDC, I think we've made a lot of progress on this over the last couple of years. We never had any of these analytics done before. And both Jonathan and Matt and some of the other folks they've hired over there Zach are making a big difference. One of the things that we're doing an affordable housing study now. And one of the things that we want to hopefully accomplish out of this affordable housing study is this conundrum that, it costs X number of dollars to go ahead and build a new house. That's the development cost, and or to replace a house. And your market values are going to be driven by how much you can charge to either for rent are to sell that house. And we have much of our city, it costs more to replace or build a new living unit than that person can make. And some of the red on here is a reflection of the weakness of our ability to either charge rents or our ability to sell things. And that's a real issue. So we have forces in our city that are concerned about gentrification, and these, the issue shouldn't be gentrification. The issue should be, how do we go ahead and generate more disposable income for people to pay more for rents or whatever? Because right now, if we cannot, part of our problem here is just the growth of our market. So, and somebody now we're getting views of their emails. So I just want to say that, and I do think that this is a learning process. And some members on the board are upset to see these, and it's kind of like being upset to see reality. I mean, from this, I think we've learned that I pick on my own project. I went ahead and did a project on the Weston Lofts that's on there, and in retrospect, I think as we were learning, this is probably not good to do residential, and it's much better probably to use, tax abatement on that. And I think we've made a lot of progress on that. I think our residential projects are using tax abatement now as opposed to, to TIF, and actually we're scaling back even on that in the stronger neighborhoods. But just a little, I guess, observation. Anyway, I'm sorry, Alderman Oldenburg, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. I'm assuming we don't know for sure whether these were developer TIF notes or if they were in fact bridged by financial institutions, conventional financial institutions. Anyone at SLDC? Do we have a sense?
I certainly don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, we haven't dug in deep to who holds the notes, and the notes transfer over time too. So it's really difficult to keep track of who's holding the note at any given period of time. So, and that's a question I'll ask the comptroller, but I'm not sure what the answer is. So.
My assumption would be a lot of these are developer taking the risk. They were monetized by developer equity up front, and to Jonathan's point, especially 5 years ago, a lot of banks have gotten away from bridging or monetizing TIF notes unless the sponsorships probably really flush and will ultimately be backstopping it to the bank anyway. So my guess would be this is sort of, a lot of these are, hey, let's assume some projections in order to get the infrastructure costs I need paid for now, and I'll take the risk whether these projections come to fruition or not. So I'm not as concerned with as much red as I see here, but what I will say to the Alderwoman from the 20th point is I think there is an impact to the city with this, and everyone's points I think are well collected here, that we are doing less TIF. TIFs are more scrutinized now. I think the market in and of itself is sorting a lot of that out. Tax abatement tends to be the more preferred path, which I think is actually more prudent and less to wild swings and covering TIF notes. So, but there is an impact to the city in the sense that I think it's more of an accounting perspective that does have some analysis with the credit ratings taking a look, and that is in our CAFR each year. These are instruments of debt that the city does report and have on its books. So there is a debt service coverage ratio that an analyst is going to pick up our CAFR every year, and is certainly not going to dig into the TIF notes, and is going to see the instrument of debt on the city's books. And if there's an underperformance based on what's collected, that is something reported that an analyst is going to quickly move on. And an analyst sitting at the New York Stock Exchange is not going to dig into this report that's generated now. So I feel there could be some indirect negative benefit to the city. And that has to be explained to analysts in a lot of ways to say, well, if you just look at the CAFR, a good portion of debt, because these are instruments of debt, are TIF notes that the city really doesn't have a financial obligation to pay, but we have to report it from an accounting perspective on the city's comprehensive financial report. So I think doing less TIFs actually is one way to course correct this. But also, we have to kind of also do our job to the credit analysts and make sure that they do understand some of those nuances with a comprehensive financial report and the debt that's embedded in it. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
May I add a comment real quick to that? I just wanted to say that something that's been discussed with SLDC is that there is the legal possibility going forward, if it's something the city would like to do, that these TIF notes could actually be held essentially by SLDC, and they would not be showing up on the city's CAFR anymore. It would only show up essentially that the pilots and EATs are being transferred over, but the note and the debt amount itself would not show up on the city's books, but would show up on SLDC's, if that was something that would help with that issue.
Yeah, Jonathan, why don't we talk offline? I'd love to try to figure out an angle on that, if that's just a, an asset transfer or a liability transfer that we could just work through in a local ordinance, but I think that would be incredibly helpful. So why don't I give you a call a little later this afternoon and we can kind of keep troubleshooting through that.
Sure.
Great.
Alderwoman Boyd, any questions? Alderwoman Boyd? Alderwoman Boyd? All right. I guess she's not present. Let's see. Dale, could you put your slide, that very first slide up again? Because I had a question about that. I wanted to circle back and then.
Do you have it up? I just want to know. I'm trying.
I'm sorry. I don't know if anybody heard
We're
me.
working on it.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dale. I don't.
There it is.
Okay. So I think this gave us some, I just want to make sure I understand all of these. It says the total number of redevelopment plans established is 145. So I guess that means that we've done 145 TIF.
Correct.
Okay. The number of executed is 121. And number of, how do we have more completed than executed? I'm confused by that.
Interesting question, and I don't know the answer to that one. We'll go back and look at it.
Okay, and then I was just trying to get these numbers to add up. That's kind of what you're doing.
Right.
Looks like you've completed one more than you've executed. When you say executed, does that mean that the other ones have died like what we ended today? So the difference between, call it 122 and, well, because you have 8 that are partially completed.
Right.
Total number underway is 6. How is underway different than partially completed?
Well, if a project had like 2 RPAs and they finished RPA 1 but not 2, that would be partially completed. If it was a project that's still under construction or whatever, it would be underway.
Okay. Number of redevelopment projects inactive. That means that.
Well, it means that not much is, for example, we talked a little bit about the Jefferson Arms. I mean, it's been approved. The new one has been approved, but it hasn't started yet. So that would be an inactive TIF.
Okay, and then total number terminated. So if we started out with 145, we terminated 30. that means that we have 115 active, is that right then?
That makes sense, yeah.
Okay, and terminated means that they've either paid off their notes or they never got started.
Or somewhere in between. At least it means the ones that the special allocation fund has been dissolved on for one reason or another.
Oh, okay. And then total payments in lieu of taxes. Now, is that for a last calendar year or something?
Yes, that's the fiscal year ending June 30th.
Okay, and then total economic activity taxes was 13. So in other words, we have $38 million roughly of diverted tax revenue that's being diverted to paying down TIF. Then is that correct? 38.
Well, the activity taxes collected, remember, half of that goes to pay off the TIF. The other half goes to the taxing districts.
Okay, so it'd be half of that then. So 6.8 million. So that's 31. About 32 million or so is what is the amount of taxes that were being diverted each year at this point. Is that correct?
That sounds right.
And that 36 million is paying the debt service on $501 million of debt
Outstanding TIF debt.
Okay. And so last year, did we pay off $43 million of that $501 million? Is that correct?
These numbers came from the comptroller's office, but I would agree with that.
Okay, so we're paying off, what is that, about a little over 8%. Total pay as you go commitments. Pay as you go. So what they're saying is,
well, there are a couple of TIFs, not many, that don't have TIF notes associated with them, but they're pay as you go TIFs.
okay, now see, none of these numbers are adding up. So if we paid off $43 million in debt last year, and we only had 25 million plus or 32 million dollars of principal and interest, there's no way that we could have possibly paid off $43 million of debt last year unless a pile of it fell off the total pay as you go. And then yeah, none of these are making any sense.
I don't know if there's anyone from the comptroller's office on today.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just not right. Okay. It'd be nice if, is there somebody from the comptroller's office that can get us correct information?
Well, if they're not
point
on
person
today,
that-
we'll go back to them.
Yeah, I know the point person that has worked on these is out of the office until Thanksgiving. So if we can, I can touch base with you, Alderman Roddy, and we can kind of get those questions kind of outlined, and then when he gets back, we'll certainly get those in front of him and try to clarify those
Matt,
issues.
You understand what I'm saying, Matt? We need to, if we have, I guess this is not part of the board bill, but whoever prepared this isn't, none of these numbers reconcile.
Yeah.
Okay. I goofed up. I guess, do we have a committee substitute, or I guess not a substitute, but an amendment for this board bill?
Well, you do, and the bill itself doesn't change, but it's the exhibit where we didn't, when we filed it, we didn't have the numbers for those last 3 columns, and so the amended bill has an exhibit with those last columns, and of course we've been using that amended item for our discussion today.
Okay, well, for convenience sake, then we'll continue to do this, even though it wasn't properly before us. But we have a number of members of the board that are not on the committee. And I can't really see them too well because we have the other screen here. I'll try to go through these. Let's see. Oh, doggone it. Now I'm sorry, I'm looking for like who's on the call with us, who who are board members that are not on the committee. They have.
Well, and Chairman, this is essentially a public meeting, so there is a possibility someone from the public would want to speak.
Right, and I think we have a requirement that they sign up beforehand. I believe that's an acceptable requirement. So let's start and offer the opportunity of non-committee members to ask questions first. I see Alderman Gunther is on. Alderman Gunther, did you have any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think most of my questions have been asked, but I was also very concerned with that first page that you were critical of just a minute ago here with the numbers adding up. So no questions until we get that clarified from the comptroller's office.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman. There were other older people on earlier, but I don't see any now. If anybody else sees somebody that wants to ask questions, does anyone see anyone? I think that was it. Okay, and I do not see.
Chairman, may I have another question, please?
Sure, I'm sorry, Alderwoman.
One of the things I wanted to make reference to is that first page that we have the concern on the numbers, and those particular numbers came from the state reports that are filed by the developers to the Missouri Department of Revenue. And so between the comptroller's office and the report that's filed, it probably will be some discrepancies because we're picking up some actual, we pick up actual data that is referred in. And so I know that Jonathan and others in working with the comptroller's office can get us some more exact information versus something that comes from a state report.
Yeah, so what we report to the Department of Revenue is on a project by project basis, and I know that the numbers on that sheet that Dale sent are kind of an aggregate of all those, and I'm not sure that goes directly to the DOR. It just needs to be reported. So we'll get that clarification and try to answer any questions once the comptroller's office is available to clarify.
Yeah, because it's the timing of when the report was due versus when you did your report, calculating your numbers as well. So I'm sure I'm looking forward to the clarification. Thank you.
Okay. Unless there's an objection from the committee, I don't think that's not a part of the board bill, is it, Dale?
It is not, no.
Well, I would hope that we can get that in, something in writing to all of us, and if not, we can perhaps revisit that particular issue when we have our next meeting. But if there's not an objection, I'd like to go ahead and try to get this out of the committee so we can just get it done. We've spent several hours on this today, and every time we bring one of these things up, we have lots of questions about it, so I don't want to spend a couple more hours on it the next time unless there's a real desire to. I guess the first thing we need to do is the chair will entertain a motion to put before us the amendment that was, I believe it was emailed out to everyone.
Oh, it was. Where is?
And the amendment should only have, according to Zach, the addition of the exhibit.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to give you a motion to adopt the amendment. Is that for board bill? Give me the number.
164.
164.
Okay, we have a movement, a motion to take up, put the amendment before us of 164, Amendment 1 of Board Bill 164. It's been moved. Is there a second for that?
I mean, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Alderman?
I'm in the Google Drive, and maybe I'm looking at something wrong. I'm looking at the amendment to Board Bill 164, but there's also some other amendments to some other bills to 95 that maybe that was just attached to it by mistake or something. That just kind of threw me off.
Well, we didn't take up Board Bill 95 today, so.
Okay. All right, I'm good. I'll second the motion to put amendment number 1 to Board Bill 164 before the committee.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Madam, is there a request for previous roll?
Previous roll.
Hearing no objections, we'll consider amendment 1 to Board Bill 164 before us. Now that it's probably before us, is there a motion on Board Bill 164?
I move to pass Board Bill 164 as amended out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Previous roll.
It's been moved, seconded, request for previous roll. Hearing no objections, we'll consider Board Bill number 164 passed out of committee with the due pass recommendation. I believe that concludes all of our work here today. We did not have, gosh, we were all present today, so we don't have to worry about excused older people. I believe that's it. Thank you, everyone, for your time today, and I'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.